Like, we are. Wonderful. There we go. We're here. Okay, firstly, I'd like to welcome the world and anyone who is watching us tonight to our conversation here at Inspire, Ignite, conversations that we have, and the conversations that count. Yeah. All right. And they're brought to you by sacredyou.love. And the topic today that we're going to be talking about is who would you be without your story? And firstly, I'd like to welcome our amazing guests that are going to be part of our panel who are going to be discussing the topics tonight, and also welcoming our audience that wherever you are, whatever time zone you're in, to say thank you for being here. And if there's any questions or comments that you would like to make, please leave them down below. We'll do our best to get back to you. And also at the end, if you wish to contact any of our panelists, their information will also be listed down below for you to be able to contact them directly. Okay, so let's get started. My name is Kim Neal, and I am a relationship counsellor, have been for 20 years, and I'm part of Sacred You, and have been here ever since the beginning. So moving on from there, now I'd like to welcome our panel and ask them to introduce themselves and tell us a little about who they are and what they do. And what I'd like to do is to start with Denise. So Denise, welcome.
Thank you, Kim. And it's nice to be here with everybody and anybody that's tuning in. Thanks for tuning in and joining this wonderful conversation we're about to create together. Because I'm not sure about the rest of the panelists, but I don't know what I'm going to say exactly tonight. And that's okay. This is the creative process at its best. And this is what it's like when you show up without a preconceived story of what it's supposed to look like. But my name is Denise Garrett. I am a former firefighter, happen to be my county's first and only female firefighter. So it might not surprise you to know that some people call me the courage whisperer. And that's because I have a way of turning people's obstacles and challenges into opportunities for greater living. What I do for work is leadership development and training. And I think that's really enough about me, unless you want to know that I'm in the USA, because I know I'm here with some of my Aussie friends, mates, and it's good to be here. So thanks, Kim. Kim, very nice to connect with you here too.
Yeah, thank you. And Robin, I'd like you to introduce you, if you may.
Thank you, Kim. And Denise, might I add, you have a wonderful story. And hello to everyone. I am Robin Canzias, and what I am passionate about is helping people shift their perspective in life through mindfulness, through meditation, and through intention. And I just love speaking about this kind of subject, especially who are we without our story? Because who would we be? We wouldn't be here right now. So thank you for allowing me to share this discussion with everyone. I'm excited about being here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robin. Stuart.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Stuart Elliott, and it's an honor to be here amongst everybody and the audience. And I'm coming to you from the south of China, where I've been living for the past 20 years. Previous to that, I was living in Africa for about 20 years, and prior to that, I was living in the UK. So I've lived on 3 very, very diverse continents, and that is part of my story. And my story has taken me to the position where I'm recognized for helping people break down or break through the BS barriers that keep them trapped in life, so that they can go on to build a more rewarding life than they've got now. So it's a pleasure to help people just connect to themselves and explode into joy from within.
Thank you. And in China for 20 years, I mean, I think that's a whole story in itself.
There's a lot of stories there, yeah.
And finally, I'd love to introduce Sue Roman. And Sue, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I suppose if we're talking about life stories, I probably changed my life story, I would say at least 4 times in my lifetime, and changed them in ways that they were not really connected to the first story. So I am a professional life coach. People call me an overwhelm strategist. And I love helping people understand their stories and then turn that story into a new direction that they want to go in, so that their story defines them with more joy and more confidence and more self-belief. I'm so thrilled to be on this panel because life story and the stories we tell ourselves are so foundational to who we evolve and become over the course of a longer lifetime. So, Kim, I'm so thrilled you're asking this question. I'm so honored to be on this panel. I'm really looking forward to the stories we're going to share. So, my happy place is stories.
Thank you. Thank you. My happy place seems to be trying to get rid of mine, but that's a whole other story.
I'll coach you.
There we go.
So,
Okay, the first question I'd like to ask the panel, and anyone can start, and we'll just see how it unfolds, is what does the phrase, who would you be without your story, mean to you personally? That actual statement. I know the first time I heard it, the effect it had on me was quite powerful. So I'm just interested in how it, that actual statement, who would I be personally without my story? How does it affect you? Or what does it mean to you? Yes, please, Denise.
So when I heard that question, I thought it was a great question because the ego wants to identify with all the stories I've told myself about myself from the time I was a child, the stories I've been told about me and moving through life, right? But when I heard that question, my first thought was I wouldn't be anybody. And then I thought, well, I would be everybody. And then I really thought I would be God or creator or higher power, whatever you want to call that thing that created all this magnificent uses and everything we see, because it is pure potential. And when I let go of who I think I am, I become that pure potential.
Absolutely. And I agree with that. When we get out of that prison cell of our story, that it really does open up a world of possibilities. Who else would like to have a go at that statement? Yes, please, Robin.
So when I think of who I would be without my story, I wouldn't be here today with other like-minded people having this discussion. I was in a different career field for 17 years, and I had the courage to say, I want something else. I want more for myself. And I didn't realize that I can change my story until I actually stepped foot and became that person to change that story. And I didn't let who I was before affect who I am now. So everything has led me to this present moment and being on, excuse me, and being on this panel with all of you guys.
Thank you, Robin. Stuart, yep.
Yeah, I think it's a very deep question, and we can go down a big rabbit hole if we're not careful, and we're not necessarily going to have time to explore all the parts of the Warren. But I think one of the important things about our story is it is a reservoir of wisdom for us to draw upon if we choose to. It doesn't have to define us, but it's always there in the background that we can dig into. And if we accept that whatever choices we made in the past were the right choices at that time, it's very, very empowering because we're not looking back with regret, we're looking back with gratitude. Say thank you. And I'm including mistakes and the choices that we may consider today as not so wise in that situation. It doesn't have to define us. We can grow from that experience and become whoever we choose we want to be, and have all this knowledge, these experiences to help us move forward and grow into a better person.
Yeah. Before I comment on that, Sue, do you want to say anything about that original statement question?
I agree with Stuart. I think that how we take the challenges in the various stories of our lives and then look for everything we did right in those stories and then apply those to our next challenges, we just keep up leveling that who am I with my story, because my story keeps getting better as I go along if I apply what Stuart's just saying. Now, if I don't apply what Stuart's saying and I go back to my old story, then the story of who I am deeper embeds into perhaps a more negative, a more damaging, a more stuck place.
Okay.
Can I add a teeny bit of science to this?
Sure, please.
A little bit.
Just
Okay.
just a little bit.
Tiny bit, yeah, tiny. So the limbic brain system, which is our fight, flight, survival center, as I understand it, part of it is our librarian. It's the librarian of everything that's happened to us in our lives. It documents the safe things, the not safe things, the joyful things, the happy things. And when we come up against new situations, that survival center flips back through the archive and goes, oh yeah, here's a story that matches this one and this one and this one. So if we pull all these together, this is the story of this new situation. And that becomes your life story, the one you identify with. That instance. That's as short as I'm going to make.
Yeah, I do hear about the life story, and I understand what you're saying there, and I agree. The part of the story that I have dealt with for years, with both myself and through clients that I've worked with, is that a lot of people don't realize initially that they even have a story and the limitations that that story controls their life. And it isn't until something happens or it's pointed out to them that they're actually living in a story that they've created, and it carries on from childhood through most of, this is my view of it, it carries on through childhood through most of their life. And it affects who they are, how they think, how they deal with whatever situation. And until that realization that they're doing this to themselves through this story that they hold on to as a reality, that there is no change for them. And it's only once they start to trigger in that, hang on, is this true? Is what I'm thinking true? And usually it's a situation or an event that can occur, which will cause them to look at their self or start to question their self. And it's that questioning, I find, that starts to allow them to see that not only are they in a story, but they can change their story. Sorry, that went more into a bit of a waffle rather than just asking you guys a question. Would any of you like to come back on that?
I think it's very true that we need sometimes a big push from life, shall we say, to help us break that story. For instance, when I was living in Africa, I was doing a lot of landscaping. I was working outside in the sun the whole day. And when I came home, I used to grab a Frosty to rehydrate myself. And it turned into 2 or 3 or 4 or however many, were down at the time. And I suppose technically I was an alcoholic. And then one day life kicked in and said, hey, Stuart, here's hepatitis for you. No more drinking, no more eating meat. And the funny thing was, I didn't miss any of it. So it was like I needed that push to recognize that pattern that I created in my life, or that story I created in my life. And when, the body took over and fixed the hepatitis and everything else, I didn't even want a drink. And I tried meat once and it was disgusting. So I gave it to the dogs and they were so happy to have a big piece of rub steak. So I think we need sometimes that push. Otherwise we continue those patterns because we've not made that connection in our mind that we've created a pattern. And we also have a choice to get out of it, but we need to have something to wake us up to that choice.
Assuming that that's what I'm talking about and what you're saying there is true, then my question for each of you would be, what was the trigger? What was the realization that helped you to realize that you had a story that was controlling your life? If that's how it was for you. I'm just curious on that point.
I can
Yes.
speak to that. I think probably the first time I recognized that there was a story was when I was in my early 20s. And my husband and I were, he was a photographer, I was his office manager, I was his marketer. And we'd gone out to one of those places where there are a lot of vendors and we were showing our wares, and we had a beautiful table set up, and he was sitting behind it and I was sitting behind it. And we were just sitting, and all these people were passing by and nobody was stopping. And I said, honey, go talk to the people. They want to know what you do. He goes, oh, no, I'm not talking to them. He says, you talk to people. I said, no, I'm not talking to people. And then it bounced back and forth. And eventually I said, well, one of us has to talk to the people, otherwise nobody's going to know where they're. At that moment, I realized that my story was, I preferred to be invisible. My safe zone was in invisibility. And I had married a man that I thought was the performer, because he was. He was a drummer, he was a singer, he was a puppeteer, he was an actor. So all those things. And yet sitting behind the table trying to sell something that was important to him, couldn't stand up and do that. Wear the mask of being somebody else, a fictional character, but he couldn't bear himself. And I had chosen to be invisible all my life because it was physically and emotionally safer.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very, prejudiced neighborhood, and being who I was and being very visible wasn't really safe all the time. So for me, invisibility was my choice. That was when I recognized what my story was. And that day, I chose not to be invisible anymore.
Yeah. Just in regards to that, Sue, from a counseling point of view, it really does come back that we take on protective actions as a child to keep ourselves safe. And it works very well for the child. But then as we start to grow, we forget that we've done that to ourselves, but the protective action remains. And then as an adult, it doesn't serve us. Like you said, I'm sitting there invisible, even though I want to step out and, challenge the world and do all sorts of things. Yet this protective action, or the story that has become part of our reality and part of our truths, holds us back. So what a wonderful experience for you to be able to recognize that in that moment, because that starts to crack the egg. And then from there it can grow. Anyone else want to share their first experience? Yes, please.
I think for me, it wasn't necessarily as, sounds, Sue, like it was like this moment of awareness that you was self-like generated, like you had the awareness. For me, I was studying with a mentor, and the mentor started talking about the victim mentality and the blame game and that kind of thing. And like, it's kind of like I got called out for it, wasn't very comfortable. But the reality was it served me well, because from that point, I realized that I'm always at choice, and I can choose to play victim, or I can choose to look at what's going on and say, if this isn't working for me, what might work better, and get in motion around it. So that helped me create a new story, if you will, rather than the same old tired old victim story that I had been creating and recreating and that. And it taught me too that I'm the author of my life. I'm not like, I'm not the one that's just a little figure on the stage that's acting out some predestined something. Like, I really do have choice, and I get to write it however I want. So why not write it the best that I can? But it wasn't comfortable for me, and for anybody out there that's struggling with your story, especially I can relate to what everybody's talking about, when we're kids, we have these stories that we make up because typically something happens. And like Kim said, it's for our protection. And then we hold on to it, and it doesn't serve us after we reach a certain point in life. And if that's someone out there watching, just know that, you can take the pen up in your hand and write a new ending at any moment.
Yeah. And that realization all of a sudden that you can do that maybe I can create the world that I want, not just keep repeating the dogma over and over and over. Anyone else? Please, Robin.
So I love the fact that you just said, creating the world that I want, because for me, I was always the introvert, the one who didn't want to be seen, the one who wanted to stay in, to stay in the background and stay behind the curtains. And I realized that last year I had to actually put myself forward in front of the world. And I created my own podcast. And that was my first step to actually saying, hello, world, I am here. I'm ready. I'm ready to become who I am supposed to be. And that's, and that really brought me out of being an introvert.
And that takes courage from him. And the thing I love about courage is fearing something, but doing it anyway.
Yes.
And, you know, that's such an enormous step for anyone's life to take on these fears, worries that are in front of us. And to one day, instead of running away from them, to turn around and face them and step into them, just to realize that they were never really there. It was just another story that we were holding on to. You know, so I think that's a great stuff.
What's interesting is that there is, in every story we've just been relating, an awakening moment when we make that realization, whether we're forced to by a circumstance or something internal awakens us and says, okay, we have control. We can make the things happen. We're not dependent on the patterns of the past, but we have that ability to move forward and to change our story. I think that's a very, very important realization to take on board.
And I absolutely agree. But Stuart, let me ask you this question. How do we individually, in the different ways that we connect with people, how do we help them to recognize that they have a story which is controlling their life? How do we, or is it not up to us? Is it just up to something needing to happen in their life that will change them? Because I deal with people that are 70, 80, 90 years old and still living in their story. Back to the fear of what a parent said 80 years ago, even though the parent's been dead for 70 years. And they repeat, you know, the story. It's like the same radio station over and over and over. How do we, you, I, all of us, how do we help those people? How do we shake the rattle to say, hey, you know,
I think the first
way.
thing is that something in their life or their thinking has to draw them to you. Maybe there's an unconscious recognition that there's more. But once, for me anyway, once I have that communication, I have to very, very carefully listen to where they are, what they're experiencing. And from that, I can draw on my intuition to share stories from my past or from other people's stories that I borrow. And, you know, through that, sow the seeds that will then germinate and provide the ground to germinate those seeds. I can't tell them that you're living in this story and this is what you need to do. I've got to encourage them through other stories, if you like, and let them understand that life is a story, a series of stories. What was it that took me from England to Africa to do a 6-month trip through Africa, to then live there and then move to China, where I've been for 20 years? There's a whole lot of stories there, and a whole lot of changes and growth that I had to go through. And if I can share what I did, then I think I can help to stimulate the germination of the seeds that I've been sowing.
Okay. And I believe that when you can encourage people for who you can be compared to who you were, that is a great gift. Anyone else like to comment on this part?
I would. I think that when you're dealing with older people, as you said, you're dealing with people who are 60, 70, 80. Is that right?
Yeah.
Kim?
Yeah. All ages.
Okay. Well, the older person has coming from the perspective of an older person, we have a different understanding of our stories because we are at that place in our lives. If we've been stuck in a story for most of our lives, as Tim says his clients are, when you strip away that story without giving them something to replace it with, even if it's just a tiny seed of something, they are completely lost and they will fall into decline very quickly. We are not as resilient. Well, many of us are not as resilient as a person whose mind has not reached a certain level of stasis, perhaps, or we've allowed our minds to go into stasis. So those people, and I have clients who are in their 70s as well, Kim, and they are terrified of letting go of the stories. Even if they've got a good story to replace it with, they're terrified that when that good story disappears, they forget about it in some way, there'll be nothing, there'll be no identity.
Lose their self. They
Yeah.
lose their self.
They lose themselves. So, I mean, what Stuart is saying is entirely right for a younger group of people. But the older people, because we see there is an end date, there's a day sometime in the future, we don't know when that is, that our story will actually really end. We're afraid to give up even the worst stories because they are who define us. And it's a love-hate fascination with those stories. So that's the older person's perspective.
Yeah. And I've experienced exactly what you're talking about, and it's very true. So thank you.
Kim,
So,
I think it helps with older people to focus on what legacy they want to leave behind. I've done some work with this. And when you're approaching the end of your life, a lot of times you are looking at like, what am I going to leave behind for people, for my loved ones? And so when you can start conversation, then what would you like to leave behind? Yeah, you went through this horrible stuff and you're not trying to take their identity away from them. You're just trying to say, what do you want to leave behind? And let's talk about how you might be able to do that. I think that can give some opening for a shift in identity. Not like it's going to happen like that. And I think that Sue is absolutely right. You can't take away anyone's identity, regardless of their age, without replacing it with something, because to us, it feels like we're dying.
Yes.
When our identity is at risk. And so we'll do anything to avoid that. But I think for older people, when we think about legacy and we can start that conversation, it might be helpful.
It's interesting that you say that, Denise. Can I rebut on that one?
Sure.
Okay, I'll make it quick. It's interesting that you say that because the person who is in such great fear, and a couple of my clients, they fear that the legacy that they leave behind is going to be a negative one of all of the bad things that happened in their lives that their children will remember, their grandchildren will identify with those. And if they try to replace that with a better story, they know that their families won't believe them that story is real as well. It's another side of them. I don't agree with that because I know their families see multiple sides of them. They only see the worst of themselves in these particular situations. Legacy is a huge part of this conversation, huge. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. But there are both sides to it. Am I leaving a good legacy or am I leaving a negative legacy? So.
I would like to ask this question because each of you are here today because you read the heading of this panel discussion and that touched something inside you to want to come and share. So in regards to who would we be without my story, or who would we be without our story, what is it you would really like to share to the people listening here in regards to from your perception of what it would be like to be without that story? What are the opportunities that it would give people? How can you reach out and touch someone with why you're here today? Please, Robin.
Well, a story doesn't define a person. A story doesn't define me, but it adds to it's just another chapter in my book. I can be the driver of my life, or I can be the passenger, and I choose to be the driver of my life. You can always change your story, but it never defines you as a person.
I really love the analogy that your story is just another chapter in your book, because to look at it, you can keep writing your book, and like any story in a book, it can start one way and change dramatically by the ending. So yes, it's not the same chapter over and over. I just thought that was very powerful. So thank you very much for that.
I think personally, if I didn't have the story I have now, I would have created another story, which is along the lines of what Robin was just saying, because we are continually creating stories about ourselves, and we will draw on memories, incidences, whatever from the past to lead us into that new chapter. But there comes a point when we realize, or we can make a realization that maybe that these chapters of our past are not serving us in the way we thought they would, and that we have more control over letting them go and creating a better chapter.
Yeah. And that's a gift when we achieve that moment, that understanding, that awareness that, hang on, I can be anyone I want to be. I've just got to change the story that I'm telling myself.
Yeah,
which
I love
is
that,
powerful.
Stuart. I love that. I'm crazy because I recently decided that I can do my part to create peace on earth. And that is what I'm passionate about, and that's why I'm here. And I believe that it starts inside. It's an inside out job. And so it's by having these kinds of conversations, like with Sue and Robin and Stuart and Kim and Sophia, it's these conversations that make that possible. And I noticed that we had a comment over in the chat, which we'll get to later, I imagine. But I just want to say, like, when we find peace within ourselves, when we are at peace with ourselves, we create more peace in our world. We create more peaceful relationships, even when someone gets wrapped around the axle, is what I like to call it. But I love that that's what Stuart says, but I have to remind myself of that. So I'm creating this story every day. And sometimes I do a better job of creating it, being in the driver's seat, as Robin said. And sometimes I fall over there in the passenger seat and forget, that, like Stuart was talking about, like I forget to write the story the way I want it to end, or Kim said that. But it's through practice, and it's through having that vision that keeps me going and working on creating the best story I can. Like, I want my story to have a Disney movie ending, you know?
It's
And that awareness is very important, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
I remember I was in a class at the School of Philosophy, which is an amazing organization around most of the world. And someone walked into the class, and we were halfway through the process of the class. And he was only there for about 5 minutes, and he made a statement to answer a question or something that was said. And then he left minutes later. And I don't know who the person was, and I don't know why he was in the class, and I don't know why he was there for such a short time. But the words he said when he was being asked about stories as such, he said, the way that I look at life is that this is just scene one of the play. And it's like the beginning story of any play. It'll open up and it might be full of drama or whatever. But the fact that that's scene one, and then where the future can go and what we can turn it into and how we can create it, is the play that we're writing, which you just mentioned about wanting your story to be like a fairy tale. You can write the story, so for me, it's never about the past, because we can choose to start living tomorrow, today, and simply by recognizing that we have the skill and ability to be able to do that by changing our story. Got another question for you. How can we take the question, who would you be without your story, as an ongoing trigger, okay, for deeper self-exploration and growth? How can we take that statement and make it a part of our life to actually, when an event occurs that we don't like, when something comes up, that disappoints us or whatever, that we can look at it, recognize that that thought is just a story, and then look at creating a new one right then and there to make it a trigger. I don't know if that question made sense, but I kind of understood it.
I have two quick thoughts on that. It's a practice that I am practicing, and it's when something comes up that I don't like or perceive as negative in some way, I ask myself, what would I rather see, and who do I choose to be?
Yeah. And that's a wonderful way of doing it, Denise.
Along those lines, I also say, and it's not easy to do, but that's a wonderful experience. I'm curious how I can grow from it.
Okay. So you take it as a positive and then add to it.
Yeah, because every experience is a learning point if we choose to look at it that way. But the first thing we have to do is take away the emotion and just accept the fact that it is actually, it's happened, and not get triggered by that emotion. And that takes a lot of practice, obviously, because emotions get fired up very, very, very quickly. But once we can do that, then we have the choice how we want to react to it. And do you want to react in a negative way and go down that nasty rabbit hole? Or do you want to look, okay, where's the learning point? How can I grow? Or how I can grow, not how can I, because that in itself is a negative statement. And it's a doubt statement. I mean, how I can grow from it, I'm curious about that. Approach it from the curiosity point of view and the possibility point of view.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, does this story that I am telling myself, does it serve me? You know, if it serves me, embrace it, keep a hold of it. But if it doesn't serve you, recognize that and learn the skills of changing it.
Yeah, I mean, you got an eraser on the end of your pencil.
I like that. That's rub that one out, you know. No, I do. It's been such great comments coming through today.
I've got a couple more for you if you like.
Please add to it.
So as Denise said, and as Stuart said, there are questions that we ask ourselves. So when a story comes up, behavior pattern, whatever you want to call it, or a situation that rattles me in some way, the question I ask is, what is it that I don't know about this? So there's a piece of it that I have yet to learn. What is it that I don't know about this? And then I wait for that awareness to show up. And then I ask, now that I know this, how will I use it to change my future so that I'll be in a different place next time or this time?
Yeah.
What don't I know about this already? And how will I use this now to change my situation or my future?
Yeah, what don't I know about this already? It really does open the mind up to greater awareness and knowledge, and being able to look at it from other points of view, rather than just taking it as a truth. Thank you for that. That's lovely, Sue.
And then I've got that pencil with the eraser on the end.
I thought the eraser on the end was a very good one. So rub it out. You know, I think I need a very big eraser sometimes.
I think we all do.
Yeah, it's quite a journey, isn't it? As you go on this path of realizing at some stage that you're the one in control of your life. And for myself, I have found that progressively, it's like 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards. You know, you're always growing and gaining and becoming more confident, more at peace and more serene. But then you'll do something, you'll just step back and got to get rid of this one. That's not serving you. Want to move past that one.
I think the key though is realizing that you are in control.
Yes.
That's a very, very big thing. And once we get that and we take that on board, then it doesn't matter what happens, and whether we step backwards a couple of times, we can come back to that realization, that understanding that we have that control of how we react to whatever's coming to us.
Yeah. I think that's probably the greatest awareness, is that moment of realizing that you are the one in control. You can either step away, you can run away, or you can step forward. You know, you can look at it, you can hold it. I think that is just, it's a very hard point to achieve, because letting go of all of your past, recognizing that you were the one responsible for a lot of your history and your past, is massive. But it also empowers you that you are the one that can create your tomorrows.
Yeah.
So my history is not based on them. You know, my history was based on me and what I was doing and my beliefs.
And the key point there is what I was doing.
Was doing. And then to step forward. And that moment of reality was both devastating and totally freeing for me. You know, that, wow, okay, you know, I've done that to myself, and there was great suffering in that. But then the realization was, hang on, if I did that to myself, I can change it and make it different. I didn't realize I was the one in control, as you were saying, Stuart. You know, to have that.
Yeah, and if we go
moment.
back to the analogy of the story, many people fear writer's block when they're sat there with a blank piece of paper. So they like to hold on to the past because they don't want to face that blank piece of paper. They don't see the potential in it.
Yeah, I agree totally. You know, because then the future is unknown, and we tend to fear the known. Sorry, I'm waffling again.
Can I just add
jump
to
in.
it? Also sounds like taking accountability of your life and of what you say and what you do, and that takes a lot of awareness as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And courage.
It's about accountability. Courage, fearing it and doing it anyway. You know, it's about being tired of it how it's been, reaching that point of enough is enough. And I don't want my tomorrows to be the same as my yesterdays. I want to make a difference. To me, don't need to save the world in this one. This is my journey for me to save me, but in saving me, I can help a lot of other people, but I must start with me first.
Okay.
And if you have the courage for you, then that becomes contagious to those around you who see the path that you've been on and how you've changed. I think it's a wonderful journey, but also you're stepping into the unknown. There's a wonderful song by Chris Clark, who died a few years ago. And the title of it is Left or Right at Oak Street, the choice I face every day. I don't know which takes more courage, the staying or running away. And it really is all about either we continue doing what we're doing and stay in the story because that's safe and known, or do we turn left into the unknown? And that's where the mystery and the magic is moving outside of ourselves. I think there's no greater gift than when we can surprise ourselves, or when we are surprised by ourselves. I think that's a beautiful thing. So our time is moving up a little. We've still got a bit of time. Do any of you guys have a question that you would like to present out there for us to look at? No. Yep. Sorry, Denise, you're muted. Everyone's muted.
So my question is, it is for the panel. When you think about things that happen in life, because things are always happening to us, and like I'm thinking of like natural disasters or economic shortages, like, you know, maybe we don't have quite enough money to do something we want to do. When you think about that, how can you frame it in a way in your story that empowers you instead of limits you?
I think for me is, sorry, go on, Robin.
No,
You go
no,
first.
Robin,
was
being the lady.
I was, thank you. I was just going to say gratitude for me. Everything begins with gratitude. Like you mentioned, everything is always happening. There's always something happening, but we have to be grateful for what just the littlest things can change our perspective. And for me, I think it's gratitude.
Love it.
Stuart?
Yeah, I was going to just say that for me, the best way is to accept that fact without allowing myself to be triggered by that fact, because then I have a choice of how I go forward. You know, if you think of a road rage incident, we get triggered so quickly and then we lose control. But we can always, even in that loss of control, recognize that we've been triggered. And once we accept that we've been triggered, then we can move forward. We can choose how we want to move forward. And once we do that, the possibilities are endless.
I love that, Stuart. Like, I got a visual when you were talking. It's like you can put your foot on the accelerator of the reaction, or you can take it off the accelerator and start just detaching from the emotional reactivity of it. Really good. And Robin, of course, gratitude. I love it. I love it. Love it. One of my favorite.
Yeah, don't you think that gratitude is something that should be taught at the school level to everybody? It's so important and so empowering.
Again, I'm not quite sure how to do those messages or read them without popping them up on the screen for everyone.
While you're figuring that out, I'm just going to give my response to Denise, if I may.
Please. Yes.
Okay. So, and I have been in that place where there was no money for food. There was no money for anything. And I go to a very physical place, which is never give up, never give in, and celebrate absolutely every good thing. That's no matter how little it is. Celebrate it to the absolute. Do a happy dance. Scream, yell, dance, sing, but celebrate the smallest pieces that you can accomplish. Never give up, never give in. And that's how I live my life.
I love the idea of dancing, Sue, because I think it raises our energy when we do that. You know, it raises our energy, and when we raise our vibe, more good stuff starts happening for us. So it's great. That's great. Thanks. It was a great comments to the panel. Thank you so much. Kim, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I did. First, I'd say a great question, because it really brings out each of us. For me, it's when the world is really coming down hard and heavy. I think the place where I end up going is I trust in self. And I trust in self to be able to know that I can deal with this. I can handle it. I will make the right decisions. I will step through. So it's having that self-value and self-worth, which only comes from a long journey, which we've all been on, of learning how to trust ourselves and believe that we can make our own stories and deliver it to ourselves. So yeah, trusting in self is, for me, a very good one. Now, I have some things here that I've been asked to. Nope, they're gone. Oh, hang on. Do I click on them? No, you don't want me? No, okay. Let it go. We might get Sophie to read some of those to us. I think that would be the simplest way to do it. So what I want to do now, I just have two final questions that I want to share with you guys. And just going around the room, it's firstly, what have you gained from this panel discussion for you? So what have you gained, if anything, from this? And the second question would be, what is there that you would like to share with the audience, things that you would like to give them? So, Sue, let's start with you, if that's okay. What have you gained from this evening?
I think that listening to everybody else's perspectives and where they're coming from has reminded me of so many times in my life when I have experienced what they're talking about, may have pushed to the background because other things that seemed more pressing took over. So I want to thank each and every one of you for reminding me of so many pieces of who my own experience. So that's incredibly valuable.
Thank you. And to the audience, anything you'd like to offer?
Absolutely. I'm an overwhelmed strategist. I help people find that inner calm. I help them find their identity and help them refine their stories. So if anybody who is watching or listening wants to have that conversation, they can contact me at greatestpath.com/contact. Fill out a little tiny form, and I'll be happy to talk to them for up to an hour and a half for free. And they will take away an MP3 play. Everything we talked about, the steps, the next steps, who they are, who they want to be, what their holdbacks might be, where their fears are. It's a very gentle conversation, and it's completely free. They get an MP3 replay of it and written highlights as well. And there's no sales pitch. It's just honoring where they're at.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here tonight. You've been a precious gift.
Oh,
I keep saying tonight, it's midday in Australia, but I keep saying tonight. I don't know why.
it's tonight here.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. And Stuart, I don't know what time it is over in China, but what, if anything, have you gained from this evening?
Yeah, well, we're on Perth time, so it's still early morning. It's 9 o'clock. But I think the biggest thing is to hear everybody's understanding and the way they see it, because it opens up a whole lot of windows. So it's also reinforcing the message that, you know, we have that control of our story. Once we come to that realization, then the future is limitless for us, and we could define it and make it and grow it in the way we want. But the big thing is that we have to start recognizing and accepting, without judgment, accepting this is where we are and this is how we've created ourselves. And there's a benefit to that as well in many ways, because there's a lot of knowledge and wisdom that we can draw upon. And then we can move forward in a very empowering way. So hearing different people's approach to it is very, very enlightening and very empowering for everybody. So, you know, it's a wonderful opportunity to grow from this discussion.
And I agree. The variety and the different ways people see it, and the gift that each person here, each of our panelists, every one of you, if there is an audience out there that connects with one of you guys because of who you are or something you've said, or the way that you view the story, then I think it's a wonderful opportunity for the audience to contact you, because there's already a rapport just through this. So yes, I think the variety has been powerful. It really has.
And the other thing I'd like to add is I'm never going to look at a pencil with an eraser on the end the same way again.
Look, that is my takeaway. Truly, I mean, that's a great.
It just came from wherever because of the energy in the room. So it's wonderful to have that, you know, vision.
Yeah, no, good for me too, Stuart. Good for me. And is there anything you'd like to offer to our guests? Any words of wisdom or whatever?
Well, I mean, the biggest word of wisdom is that we always will always have choice about how we react to something. But we first need to become aware that we are reacting and then just accept that. And then we are empowered by choice. And it doesn't matter what the external event is, it's how we react to it, which writes our story.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's coming through clearly through this whole panel, you know, that it's very important. So thank you. Robin, for you.
My biggest takeaway as you were asking that question, I was thinking it's confirmed that for myself, that I am on the right path and where I need to be at this present time. being here with all of you and listening to all of your different perspectives about your story and who is your story and just your perspective on life. So I'm grateful for that. I guess my last words would just be, you are the driver in your life. You're not the passenger. Your story does not define you, and you can change your story at any present time.
Thank you so much. And okay, Denise, what have you gained from
Robin,
today?
I would just like to give you the opportunity to tell people how they can connect with you.
Thank you, Denise. And also, you can find me on YouTube with Conversations with Robin. I have a podcast on there, and I love talking about different conversations that are high vibrational and conscious conversations. So thank you, Denise.
Sure. And Stuart, did you share how people could connect with you?
No, I forgot to, but the best way is to go to my website, which is Stuart, STUART Elliott, and that's with 2 L's and 2 T's.com. And I have, similar to Sue, a free call for about an hour or so where we can get together and discuss and see what ways we can create the dreams that we want to make happen.
Love it. And I think that Sophia is going to make sure that our information's in the chat for people. So for me, I want to say that one of the biggest gifts that I got from this is being in the presence of such wonderful people that are on a similar path to me, that are writing their own stories and that are doing their best to serve others as they write their stories and write more empowering stories and more fairy tale ending stories. So that's just always a pleasure to be that. And I feel connected to people that I didn't know before I hopped on, other than Sophia tonight. And that's always just a joy for me to get that sense of connection. So I want to thank the panelists, and Kim, thank you so much for doing such a wonderful job of facilitating tonight. And for the viewers, I would say I'd like to bounce off of what everybody's been saying, which is awareness is key. Self-awareness is key. You are the driver. You have the pen, the pencil with the eraser. If you don't like where you're going, you can turn the car around. You can pull out your pencil and erase it, and just write a new story, write a new ending. And I think somebody out there had a question maybe about being concerned about maybe they would be more self-confident if they weren't so worried about what other people think. And I'm going to tell you, people, this is one of the biggest gifts my mentor gave me. He said, if you're worried about people judging you, stop. They are. Who do you choose to be? Your job is to choose to be you and live the life you choose to live. Who cares what they say? And I would like to just leave you with that. Sounds a little firefighter, I know, but trust me, it comes in handy, because when I get scared, that's what I remind myself of. People are judging me, and so what? So if you want to connect with me, if you're interested in creating more peace on our earth and ending violence, please reach out to me. Sophia will put my information in the post, but you can reach me at courageousleadershipacademy.com. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise. In regards to what you were just saying, I heard an expression recently which said that lions do not lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. So never worry about what someone else is saying about you, because, as you said, they will be in judgment regardless. It's part of life. For me, today has been wonderful. It's opened up my eyes to seeing how other people on the same journey but taking different paths. It's like there's all signposts are leading to the same point, and it's about the personal empowerment of self through the realization of being able to control your own story. So I think it's been wonderful. Stuart, thank you for the pencil. It's my takeaway. I'm going to go buy myself a big one and have it somewhere. I really am. And it's just been
I think maybe we should make some pencils and have on the side, who would you be without your story?
Yeah,
you can give them as a gift to people.
What a precious gift that will be. we're looking here at creating some items for Sacred You. And I think one day that will be one of them. So, I'll pay you the royalties.
Don't pay me, because it's a collective effort. It doesn't come from
Okay.
me.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Guys, I'm going to pass it over to Sophia. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this wonderful panel. And as I said, this is my very first panel that I've actually operated. And it's been fun. It's been good. And I really appreciate your support.
You've
So
done a good
take
job,
care.
so take that.
God bless you all. And may we meet again. Okay. Take care.
All right, and thank you. And Tim, I think you've done a wonderful job at the very, very, very first panel. And I've enjoyed it. I love, Stuart, your thing about that eraser, definitely, and everyone else. We have had quite a few people watching us, so I hope everyone's enjoyed it. Do click on the links for below. All these wonderful guests have given up their time and to share their passion. So do click on their links. Thank you. Special thank you to John Bell, and also Leslie, Nicole, who have been putting in comments. They have gone to all the panelists. Extra special thanks to Wilma, who's been putting in all the comments, all the links. For anyone else out there who's interested, before we go, Sue, tell us about life force activators.
It's getting late. It's getting early in the morning. I can't even say it now. Life Force Activators. Yes, Life Force Activators is one of the tribes, one of the many, many, many exciting, new, life-changing tribes inside Sacred You.love. And Life Force Activators is really all about finding that vibrant, energetic frequency within yourself, going back to the life spark, the God spark that is part of you, that might have gotten a little bit tarnished over the past few years with all of the stuff that's been happening in the world. So I'm inviting anybody who wants to weave into the tapestry of their lives a fresh look at the life force that they bring to life through the conversations and the fun activities that we do. We meet once every fortnight on Tuesday. In Canada, it's 7:30 EST, and I believe that it is 11:30 Australian time. So twice a month, every second Tuesday, we meet and talk about different topics. We talked recently about how to do safe astral travel. We've talked about how to talk to angels, guardians, and guides. Those are just two. And our topics just keep changing. Whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about. It doesn't have to be what I want to talk about. And you get my vibrant life force just splattering all over you.
Which I do thoroughly recommend, because Sue definitely has an abundance of vibrant energy and vibrant life force. If we could bottle it, we'd be multi-millionaires by now, Sue. We could bottle your vibrant energy. But that is just one of our tribes in part of Sacred You.love, which is the website for our sacred community. Do click on the links below to check that out. Come and join us for just $1 Australian. And for that, you get 3 weeks of trying out not just Sue's tribe, but up to 20 other tribes, plus something very special coming on. We're going to have a tribe coming from Stuart sometime soon. So Stuart, can you just tell us what the name of your tribe's going to be?
Yeah, it's called Breaking Through the BS Barrier. And it's something that a lot of us carry around inside ourselves without realizing it, but it keeps us trapped. And once we recognize that and we break through it, then we can enjoy life satisfaction way beyond what we've got now, and just connect that amazing potential we have within ourselves and write that story which we've been talking about.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to that whenever that gets up and running. So we've got over 20 other tribes. We've got human design to astrology, to tarot reading, to self-love, self-esteem, all sorts of tribes. Do click on the link. Come and join us. Coming up next week, we have from self-sabotage to self-love, talking about self-love. Our next panel is coming up. Click on those links and come and see us. And thank you everyone for coming. Been really, really appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. It's
Thank
a
you.
pleasure.
Take care, guys.